My name is William Cowie. I'm one of the owners and the Chief Operating Officer of Precision RTO Resources, and I'll run a presentation today on some of the things we've learned over the past 10 years or so about developing compliant training resources and how we now do that in the context of AI. So, why did the compliance manager bring a ladder to the audit? Because ASQA keeps raising the bar. So thanks to ChatGPT for that one. It does do dad jokes as well, if you're keen on those. So a brief overview of who we are. We're a group of companies, so Precision RTO Resources is one of our resource development companies. We have some others that you might be familiar with. They include Compliant Learning Resources and eSkilled. And we create a really extensive catalogue of high quality training and assessment resources with a proven track record at audit. So our catalogue covers a huge range of training packages, including BSB, CHC, ICT, FSK, FNS, CPC, and many others. We also actively sponsor a number of industry events throughout the year, including Belg, ITECA, and InSources, and a number of others. And we offer an all-in-one RTO management solution with learning management system, student management system, and training content through our platform, eSkilled. So in ASQA's last report, which is from the 2022-23 financial year, they did just under 240 audits, and 83% of providers were actually found non-compliant on their first attempt. So the main reason for non-compliance relates to sort of 5 main standards, and those are around implementing, monitoring, and evaluating training assessment strategies, conducting assessment, and employing skilled trainers and assessors. And so we obviously work on the training resource side of stuff, and ASQA is now given really clear and specific guidance on what it wants to see in training resources that you select off the shelf or develop yourself. And so it sent this email out a couple of months ago now, and here is a key section around choosing compliant learning resources. So they are wanting to see a really robust training and assessment resource with all your assessments, learning guides, PowerPoints, correct methods of assessment, really current comprehensive content, and everything mapped. And so what we see as a commercial resource developer is often kind of the opposite of that. People generally come in looking for the absolute cheapest cost or the shortest development time they can get. They want things to be really simple, both in terms of learning content as well as the assessment, so they can do more tick and flick style assessments, which can also be auto-assessed. And generally the third and distant priority is the quality of the learning and assessment tools. That's not to say some RTOs put a high priority on that, but it's pretty common for that to be in a distant third place. So how do you create great compliant training resources these days? If you've ever looked at a unit requirement, you'll see that it's quite a complex document. You've got a range of assessment conditions, elements, performance criteria, performance evidence, knowledge evidence, and then foundation skills, which has to be done in bits and pieces throughout all of those things. And it's a bit of a nightmare to unpack. And I know a lot of people think that AI just solves the problem now, but unfortunately it's not quite there yet. So this is an example of a unit I've asked it to create a training resource for. I gave it the unit requirement document, and basically it returned a training resource that was actually simpler and less detailed than the actual training resource document. And some other problems we've seen with AI is it has a tendency to hallucinate facts or make things up. It does struggle with context, complex subject matter. It won't really map to unit requirements. It doesn't necessarily incorporate foundation skills or assessment criteria. And it's still really reliant on the right person writing the right questions in the right way. And another really important thing, even with the latest models which access search results, you still need subject matter experts to make sure the content makes sense and actually get things right for industry. Because a lot of the information people do in a job doesn't really get written up and put on the internet. And so it doesn't go into the language models, or it can't be accessed by the AI tool when it's searching search results. So what we do, and what most resource publishers are doing these days, is AI-assisted development. And so you still need a human brain there to design the structure and ask the right questions, but the AI assists with the heavy lifting of generating content and organizing data. And so I'll give you a process and overview, a technology overview of some of the things we do. So the general design philosophy we follow is the ADDIE model of instructional design. So that's analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation. And I'll go into some more detail on all of that later. We use ChatGPT. There's been a number of models over the last few years. GPT 3.5 is the one that came out that wowed everyone and got everyone interested in AI. But we're up to now GPT-4 Omni, which is the latest model from OpenAI. And so this is free, but you get very limited outputs per day. So it is worth paying for that. It's about $20 US a month subscription to get the full version. It's much faster. It's gotten better at context. It's more accurate. It's better at complex problem solving these days. And most critically, it actually references real-time search results now. So it's able to go out and find current information about current events or new legislation that's not in its data set and pull that into its results. And it also can cite sources for verification. So you can actually go and double check that it's provided correct information to you. And GPT-4 Omni is the industry leader in LLMs. There's quite a few models out there, but the research is saying this is the one to use at the moment. So we link this to a document management app. We use one called Notion.so. And the big benefit of this is if you've ever tried to copy paste information out of ChatGPT into a Word document, it brings with it all of its own crazy formatting and it makes a bit of a mess in your Word doc. And if you try and paste it in plain text, you've then got to go back and add in all your headers and your lists and bolding and other formatting. So this just means you can get outputs from ChatGPT into a document quite quickly and easily. It exports directly from ChatGPT. The other thing Notion does is it has a vault where you can build your big database of prompts. So there'll be things you want to ask the AI all the time. So you can basically store them all in here and organize them, and you can share them with your team so that everyone can access this little library of common prompts that you use in ChatGPT. A couple of other things you might not be aware of. When you do set up your ChatGPT account, you can give it just broad context about who you are and what you do and how you're going to develop training resources. So you can tell it you're an instruction designer working in vocational education in Australia. You can tell it what language to use, the type of tone, the level of complexity in things. And that just provides a bit of context to everything you do in ChatGPT and every conversation going forward. There's also something called GPTs, which kind of, again, an extra layer of context that goes on top of a conversation. So in this case, you go to Explore GPTs, and there's a number of ones which have been pre-built to specialize in different areas of generation. There are a couple there for vet already that you can use, or alternatively, you can create your own. So again, going into that menu, there's a Create Custom GPT button, and through a bit of a Q&A process, the GPT will actually unpack who you are, what you want to do, and then you can use that to add context to a conversation. So if you're setting out to develop a course in construction, for example, you might create a GPT and you tell the GPT, I'm developing this Cert 4 construction course. Everything's got to reference Queensland, the Queensland building regulations, work health and safety guidelines, and so on. And that just helps to provide context for every conversation you have from that point forward. Next, when we start a conversation with ChatGPT, we'll actually provide it with more context. So we'll give it the actual unit requirement documents, and then we'll basically tell it everything in this conversation is going to be in the context of this unit of competency. And so everything has to relate back to this. And then when we do further prompts, we can reference specific elements and performance criteria, and it will provide a more detailed, contextually relevant response to each one of those prompts. I'd also suggest you experiment with prompts. Sometimes you'll ask ChatGPT to do something in a certain way. In this case, we'll focus on getting an output at a certain Flesch-Kincaid score level. So I've discovered ChatGPT doesn't really work with Flesch-Kincaid score levels. So this particular output came out several grades higher. So it's actually about a university level output, and it was too complex for the students studying that course. So going back and actually giving it a bit more context and saying, this is too complex, rewrite it at a lower grade level using plain English, shorter sentences, easier to read words. It's regenerated that content at a grade 9 reading level for us. And Hemingway is actually another tool that we use to kind of check on things like reading level throughout our development process. You can also feed it AQF levels. So rather than saying AQF level 1, you take the description of what an AQF level looks like and insert that into your prompt when it's generating its outputs. And that way you'll get outputs that should be more suited to the AQF level that you're writing to. It also really strongly suggests that you read and validate the responses it gives you. So in this case, this point is just far too complicated. It's included about 3 or 4 different steps in this one output. So then we prompt it to go back and split that out into more steps. So it'll break it down into maybe a few extra additional steps. That simplifies that for the student. The other thing it did there was it referenced a list of resources, but it didn't actually provide the list of resources. So going back and prompting it and saying, tell us what those resources are, then gives you the list of things that need to be created to support that particular task or activity. And AI is really good at collating and organizing data. So now that it does scan search results, you can ask it to go and find bits of information that maybe you had to go and find in 5 different lists before and then combine in a spreadsheet. You can just ask it to list out, countries with population, the language they speak, GDP, etc., and it will pull all that information and create it into a nice table or a write-up or something for you. So it can just save you a lot of time on those simple things. So now getting into our actual development process, step 1 is analysis. And so in this step, what we're doing is analyzing the unit requirements. We do a lot of brainstorming and research, and we start consulting with subject matter experts on the unit. And the outcome we want from this stage is to understand what the unit translates to in terms of an actual job. And so what are the jobs people will do when